and I'm here with Annabelle Kirk, who is an associate at Grimshaw Architects, and we're both on the BCO NextGen committee. And welcome to our first edition of our series of talks that we're calling Disruptors, where we will be looking to challenge the status quo and hear from inspirational real estate companies doing just that. We're very much living in uncertain times, with the way that we work and the way that we live having changed in ways we couldn't have imagined. The commercial real estate sector has traditionally been slow to embrace change. However, it's now being forced to adapt in response to our new norm, providing greater appetite for innovative ideas and technologies. Startups in proptech have been leading the charge in this change, and we're excited to provide you with the opportunity to hear from a number of startups who are here to share what they're doing and how they're looking to the next wave of real estate disruption. Now, before we delve into the discussion, it's worth saying that like our previous webinar series on inspirational leaders, we would ask that in return for supporting this event, that you also help support the NHS and provide a donation today. We hope that you can help us by doing your bit in supporting our incredible NHS staff and volunteers that are working tirelessly to care for COVID-19 patients and the ongoing pressures that the last 6 months has caused. A link to the website will be sent via Zoom, so please keep an eye out. And also a big thank you to those of you that have already donated. Your support is hugely appreciated. So without further ado, I'm very pleased to welcome 4 fantastic companies and their founders, all of whom are tackling very different challenges in the sector. Firstly, we've got Martin Asmanov, the CCO of Structure.io. Structure.io is a digital platform that enables asset owners, developers, and contractors to develop construction projects more efficiently by combining compliance, productivity, and collaboration. We then have Brittany Harris, the CEO of Qflow. Qflow enables a positive shift in the way teams collect and use environmental data on live construction sites. We then have Brian Lallet, the CEO of Rest Solution. Rest Solution is an automated data governance platform dedicated to real estate organizations. And then finally, Lorna Walker, the COO of Modomo. Modomo is an innovative, affordable housing specialist tackling the housing crisis with meanwhile communities on underused sites across Europe using modular construction. So to kick us off, over to Martin at Structure.io.
Hello, let me share my screen. Okay, so do you see my screen, Kane?
Yeah, thank you.
Great. Well, hello, everybody. My name is Martin. I'm the co-founder of Structure.io, a software as a service that enables asset owners, developers, and contractors to significantly streamline their construction project delivery. We do this by combining compliance, productivity, and collaboration into an easy-to-use platform. So let me tell you a bit about my background. I'm a civil engineer, and I have been delivering construction projects in both private and public sectors since graduating university. Most recently, I worked as a project manager for the Environment Agency and DEFRA, helping them to deliver their estate program. So I basically created office spaces for civil servants. So why I have decided to start a company in the real estate sector? Aside my personal experience in the property industry, during my career, I noticed 3 characteristics of this industry that made me believe disruption is coming and there is a big opportunity. First, real estate is behind in digitization. Given it is one of the largest industries and one of the less productive, it will sooner or later catch up in digitization. And I believe this would bring a huge demand for digital products and digital services. The second thing is that this is a very mature and collaborative industry. So real estate projects have a lot of moving parts and require a great deal of cooperation between all participants, clients, architects, consultants, and contractors. And in my experience, most of the mistakes happen not because of technical challenges, but because of poor communication, something digitization can significantly improve. And the third one is vast amounts of data is created during project delivery and asset management, but only a tiny fraction is captured and recorded. The industry is still fundamentally opinion rather than data-driven. And this again is something digitization can solve and deliver huge benefits. But why this specific problem? Well, I believe bringing compliance, productivity, and collaboration together will double the efficiency of project teams, among other benefits. Let me explain. During my experience, I noticed that information was held and different processes were managed in different systems and by different people. Basically, I had different information than the consultants and the contractors I was working with. So each time I was making a decision or writing a report, I had to ask other people for information. And this is not only my experience. According to KPMG, 75% of asset owners and contractors continue to use manual processes and multiple disparate systems. They cannot easily obtain real-time project information. And this report was skewed towards large, sophisticated organizations managing multi-billion projects. For smaller companies, the situation is even worse. So managing construction projects still involves hundreds of scattered emails, spreadsheets, and legacy single-use tools. This results, again, in emails, spreadsheets, and PDFs being exchanged between all parties all the time. This first is a very manual and inefficient process. And second, it leads to mistakes and disputes. Furthermore, commercial managers and directors are forced to make their decisions based on reports that are at least 3 to 4 weeks old, which is forcing them to be reactive with their portfolio management. So what we've done is we created a system that connects all moving parts of a project delivery into one platform. To bring that to life, imagine a place where you can see all your project information connected. You can see all variations, but also all the different notices, instructions, and files related to each variation. You can see the latest schedule, but you can also baseline the different versions of this schedule, seeing where the differences between the different versions. And finally, when you want to send a new notice or instruction, instead of creating a PDF or sending an email, you log into the system, you click new, and the system select the exact communication you want to send. The system prompts you with all the required information you need to fill in to make this contractually compliant. This level of consistency guarantees that no matter how many projects you have or how many people work on those projects, you will always find the information you need at the same place and in the same format. So what does this achieve? By connecting information and eliminating manual processes, we achieve not one, but 3 things. First, we significantly increase productivity. Each person will be able to deliver more work for the same time. The second one is that we're reducing mistakes and errors. By always working with the right information and the latest decision, people will be a lot less frustrated, and this would ultimately reduce the number of claims and disputes. And the third thing, which in my opinion is the most exciting one, is that we're going to make use of the data. Consistently collecting and recording data will enable the transition from opinion-driven to data-driven decision-making. Just imagine a system where when you log in, you can see all your project and portfolio exposure in real time. You can see your most frequent issues or errors you do on your projects. And more importantly, depending on your specific projects, instructions, notifications, schedules, or risk registers, the system would be able to tell you what is the contingency budget you need at this very moment. So this level of insight will inevitably improve the decision-making. This sounds all great, but just having a great product and solving a real problem does not mean your startup would be successful. So what are the challenges we are facing as a startup? First, the coronavirus impacted us a lot. We were supposed to start new projects at the end of March, but those were canceled. And in the past few months, there were no new projects and people have been reluctant to make any commitments. However, it seems that business is starting to slowly move again, and new projects are starting in September, October time, which is great news for us. The second one is the resistance to innovation. So the industry is conservative and people are used to their ways of working. Despite pretty much everyone we've spoken with acknowledging the problem, very few people are willing to take the risk and try something new. This, of course, is not unique to the real estate industry. It happens everywhere. It just happens to a greater degree in the real estate. But to be fair, in the past year, we noticed a change in the people's mindset. People are more interested to learn about new digital tools and the benefits that they can deliver. And finally, the one procurement process is quite challenging for a startup. It takes us months to get from the first conversation to an agreement with a company. This could be very frustrating, but also dangerous if the process and the cash flows are not managed properly. And this is specifically dangerous for a startup where we don't have huge cash reserves. And what I learned since I co-founded Structureio? Well, first of all, I don't know it all. We're all experts in our domains and our own experience, but each company is having different process and it works in a slightly different ways. To build a scalable product, you have to take many viewpoints into account. So right now, I'm pretty much used to, on a daily basis, to say, I don't know, or I need to think about that. The second thing is that we shouldn't be afraid to pivot and change. So we're going to get some things wrong, and we already got some things wrong. And it's much better to make the effort and change things early than to chase unachievable vision and goals. And finally, we shouldn't pivot too much. So if we change too often, we are in a constant limbo between two changes and nothing is done. It is a very tight balance, and I would say we haven't figured this out yet, but we are trying. So thank you for your attention. I hope I was able to communicate some of the excitement and pains to be involved in a startup. And I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have in the Q&A session. Thank you, and back to you, Kane.
Martin, thank you very much. That was a fantastic overview of your business, and also comforting to hear that you've noticed changes in the industry to see that there's a greater appetite for innovation, which is what it's all about. As Martin said, and as a reminder, you all have the ability to ask questions by using the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen. So please do share any queries that you may have, and we'll look to delve into these at the end of the presentation. Next, we have Brittany from Qflow.
Yeah, cool. Hopefully you can see my screen.
Yeah.
Doesn't see, oh, there we go, now it's in present mode. Cool. Yeah, so as Kane said, I'm Brittany, I'm from Qflow. So very similar background to Martin. I'm a civil engineer, been working in the industry for about 10 years. I primarily started on the design side, working for people like Mott MacDonald and Arup and then Bureau Happold. But my co-founder, Jade, she was working on site on Crossrail as an environmental advisor. And it's really there that we sort of came across the problem that we've been trying to solve. So as a company, we are enabling data-driven, sustainable construction. We are tackling one of the more new problems in the industry, but it's ever growing. And to help us do that, we've built a team of software engineers and data scientists around us who are helping us obviously interface with the teams on site through software, but provide value through data science. So to give a bit of context, and I'm sure you guys know this, is the industry is changing. We've been largely focused on productivity, profitability, and health and safety. But there's this new kid on the block, sustainability, that seems to be taking over. So the UK has recently taken some very strong stances on big public projects like Heathrow, and HS2 is now under review as a result of its sustainability credentials. And we're also seeing a massive shift in private investment as well. So pension funds that will typically invest in development as a stable asset are now insisting that there are top-class sustainability credentials against these new developments. And so this is filtering down the chain with your developers and your contractors being asked to demonstrate their sustainability credentials more and more. And the reason this is painful for the industry is, largely what Martin said. it's an old industry. We have pretty old ways of doing stuff, and that's creating new problems. So McKinsey recently released a report saying roughly £10 billion a year is wasted in the industry because we lose data. We rely on paper to track things like materials coming onto site and waste going off. And all of this information is required for sustainability reporting, as well as quality and commercials. So as a result of these big drives coming from our clients, construction teams are feeling more and more pain because they're being asked to capture more and more information, and we just haven't got a new process in place to help them do that. On top of all that, we have all these new certifications around well standards, SKA, BREEAM, LEED. These all require more information into them, and large contractors and developers are committing to delivering net zero. So we recently had the Contractors Declare movement, which followed on from Architects Declare and Engineers Declare, all about how they're going to deliver net zero projects. And a huge part of that is actually demonstrating that you've done it. So on top of all that, there's a huge potential for global impact. So even though it is a largely hidden problem at the moment, there's a huge opportunity for change. And that's why we've focused on the construction phase of development so much, because we feel that this is where there's a huge opportunity for improvement. So a lot of what Qflow does is looking at how can we take that pain out of the process and add value back. So similar to Martin, we look at automating the data capture, making sure that capturing that data is as easy as possible, analysing it so that any errors, like, for example, if you are tracking your waste off your construction site, if you don't have the EWC code for that waste, so that specifies what type of waste it is, then you're not compliant with the Environment Agency's duty of care, and that's a huge risk to the project. If you get caught on that, you can be fined £500 just for having the piece of paper wrong, but you can also experience huge fines if actually that waste was disposed somewhere that it shouldn't have been. So the cost implication for this is huge on projects, although it's not always realised. But then finally, after having eliminated those errors before they become a risk, we're taking that data and feeding back useful insights to the team so that they can inform how they move forward. And a really good example of this is some of the work we did with HS2. So about a year ago, they deployed Qflow on the Old Oak Common demolition site. And within 3 months of tracking their waste data across the project, we identified that if they switched one of their waste disposal facilities to one nearby, they could not only save £62,000, but they could also eliminate a ton of carbon over a year. And that insight was derived purely by tracking where they were moving different volumes of waste across literally dozens of different disposal facilities. And it's those sorts of insights that will help our industry make these incremental step changes towards more sustainable construction. So we work with all kinds of people, from tier 1 contractors to developers, all the way down to clients like Dorset Council on tiny highways projects. And we've sort of created Qflow to be super flexible. So whether it's a £7 million highways upgrade or a £2.4 billion commercial development in Canary Wharf, the tool still works and it still provides value across the entire development. So the challenges that we tend to face, similar to what Martin said, is there is that sort of pace in the industry, very, very slow procurement cycles, which do make it difficult for startups because you're constantly trying to balance the books. But one of the things that you can do to get around that is finding the champion, the person who's had that culture change and who is really willing to back you and find the back doors. And there are always back doors in this industry. It's a very relationship-based industry, and so there's often ways that you can get around that. I think, particularly as we focus so strongly on sustainability and environment, one of the big challenges we come across is this cost versus value, and what is the true value of what we're doing here. And one of the things that we've talked about a lot recently with the net zero roadmaps is trying to create a solid bar between sustainability and commercial gains, so that if you're moving one, you're tugging the other. So you can't have this sort of floppy piece of string that ties the two, so it's really hard to see why you should commercially be investing in sustainability. And a lot of what Qflow is doing is capturing the data that informs that decision making. So as with HS2, we weren't just talking about saving 1 tonne of carbon, we were saying actually you're also saving £60,000. And you can build those solid, rigid bars between both cost and value. But it takes a bit of time in terms of understanding what the industry responds best to and what they'll take most seriously as well. I think our industry is incredibly skeptical, particularly when you're talking about things like sustainability. I know health and safety had the same battle about 10 years ago, convincing the industry that it was worth investing in people's safety. They now seem to have got that. I think we're on the same journey with sustainability now, where we're on the up ramp, sort of saying, no, it really does save you money. But that's one of those battles that we're gradually getting over, and we're having a really good impact. So I think a lot of the learning and growing that we've done, and some of the sort of key insights that I'd love to leave you guys with, is that always tie it back to commercials. If you're talking about sustainability, the majority of people don't care enough to act on that yet. So tying it back to commercials is so important for getting real change. And that's something that we're sort of just about nailing now, which is giving us a huge amount more progress. The second one is being industry-led, not technology-led. So because my co-founder and I came from the industry, we were all about solving the problem, not playing with cool tech. Now, we love tech, we actually do. Like, the stuff that our data science team deliver blows my mind every time. But actually focusing on the problem and how you solve that most effectively, understanding the needs of the industry and the guys on site who don't want to use drop-down lists, they don't want to use free text, they just want to snap a photograph and go and like keep moving. Construction's hectic, and having a true appreciation of what will work for the industry is really important. Being industry-led, not tech-led. And then the final one would be practice what you preach. So we are incredibly driven by sustainability, and we really honour a culture of transparency and honesty and trying to be super accountable. And we try and encourage our clients to do that as well by being open with their data as much as possible. And I think, really practicing what you preach gives you that ability to talk more realistically with people and not get caught out. I think something that our industry struggles with is actually we try and play a lot of smoke and mirrors. And so there's a lot of people coming out and saying, we're super sustainable. But then when you actually try and engage them in that discussion, they're like, actually, all we care about is commercials. And so if I could, wish one thing for the industry, it would be for us to practice what we preach just a little bit more. So I hope that was interesting and useful. And obviously, if you want to find out more about what we're doing or who we work with, then drop me an email on the below. Cheers, guys.
Britta, thank you very much. That was very informative, and I think you're absolutely right. There's a huge part to play when it comes to transparency and accountability with this, and lots of different approaches that can be taken. So next we have Brian from REST Solution. So over to you, thanks.
Thank you, Ken. So hello everyone. Thank you, BCO, Ken, and Annabelle for having me. So I'm Brian, co-founder and CEO at REST Solution. So Guillaume and I have created REST Solution 2 years ago in order to address one of the main pain points that asset and property managers are facing. That is a lack of connectivity between applications and teams due to the data that is not accurate, that is not consistent, outdated, and dispersed in many sources. In a word, we want to provide real estate organization with a one-stop shop online tool to access any data from any source. So what is REST? REST is a protocol of communication between softwares that enables them to talk to each other. So we have developed our solution in order to streamlining all the data flows that are fragmented and dispersed in the entire real estate industry value chain. As a result, REST provides with one, connectivity between applications that do not talk to each other by automating data flow. And secondly, connectivity between teams and collaborators and operational efficiencies. The team. REST Solution is a company made up of 7 people, including developers, data engineers, and data analysts. Guillaume and I met thanks to a common friend. Guillaume has a tax lawyer background specialized in structuring real estate investment and worked for major American law firms such as Baker McKenzie and Latham & Watkins. We are also very happy to have in our team Newell Patel as a board member and advisor. He's a former CEO of BlackRock Real Estate EMEA, and he does help us for the purpose of product development and business development. Myself, before having a business engineering background, I used to be an investor in real estate through a family-owned real estate asset management firm. And that enabled me to identify all the frictions, both in terms of productivity, inefficiency, and information sharing within the real estate value chain. Also, in my previous experiences, I did acquire skills in data analytics in order to help our clients today through a hands-on approach. So the context is the following one. As you can see, there is a lot number of stakeholders in the value chain. The outcome is that the data is fragmented, dispersed, and not easily accessible when wanted by each player. So it is difficult for any real estate organization to access and collect data. So the problem in a nutshell. The basic issue that we address is the ability for asset managers to access data, even basic data such as outstanding rents, especially in tough times like this, and accurate rent roll, in relation to the assets under management that are consistent and updated. The issue of the accessibility of data triggers two things. One, a major loss of productivity, assessed to 40% of the time spent by asset managers and property managers on one, data collection, data cleaning, and data crunching. This loss of productivity results from the time that asset managers have to spend even with dedicated team as a result of the lack of any tool available in the market to automate this back office work. Secondly, a major issue in terms of data reliability that is limited to a maximum 80%. So on a daily basis, what it entails. This situation results from the fact that for now, the asset managers have to wait for the reporting sent on a monthly or quarterly basis by its property managers, which are often external, to have at their disposal a vision on basic information such as outstanding rents or other information regarding the rent roll, for instance. This process of data transmission and data collection is now made on a fully manual basis. What we are doing technically. Our solution enables to fully automate the data retrieval from the property manager to the asset manager on a live basis. We directly plug our solution on the IT tools of the external property managers and your IT system in order to fully automate the data collection without any intervention from the property managers and or asset managers internally. Consequently, we provide you with back office automation and measure operational efficiency. Our core expertise relies on our ability to create a customized dataset which is reliable, consistent, and updated on a daily basis. On the dataset, once the dataset is ready to be used, we are configuring the platform to match your operational needs, such as configuration of dashboards, specific ones, specific graphs, specific KPIs, specific computations, multi-language as well is supported. And also, we are able to create as many interfaces as you need for your different teams spread across multiple countries, because we are chasing and we are working with corporates that are operating in many countries. What is REST today, what we have been able to achieve since 2 years now, that we have more than 10 clients now, and our main clients are, for the time being, Foncière, a listing company that managing more than 1 billion of AUM, or also Savills, a well-known real estate actor based in the UK as well. And for instance, FNA that is shopping on the ground real estate manager in France. So thank you for having me, and thank you for the time spent with me.
Thanks, Brian. Very interesting, and obviously data is such a big part of our industry that is always being looked at and analysed more and more. So, you know, no doubt, especially for global asset managers, what you're trying to tackle here is a really good solution.
Exactly.
And finally, over to Lorna Walker of Modomo.
Thanks very much. So just want to start with a couple of numbers. 2.5 billion is the number of additional people that will be living in cities by 2050. 340 million people is the number of people who may be annually flooded out of their homes by the year 2050. So what these two challenges illustrate, or these two numbers illustrate, are some of the huge challenges that we face as an industry: climate change, climate justice, mass urbanization, and how you address those challenges effectively, equitably, and sustainably. And on top of those challenges, we've now also got thrown into the mix a global pandemic to deal with. So what I want to tell you today is a bit more about Modomo and how we are trying to respond to those challenges in our way. We're trying to do that by solving the housing crisis and doing that in a sustainable way. And I want to inspire you as the future of the industry, as the next generation, to also think about what you're doing to tackle some of these generation-defining challenges. So I'm Lorna Walker, and I am one of the co-founders of Modomo. My role is Chief Operating Officer and Head of ESG. Prior to Modomo, I spent over 12 years at CBRE in a variety of different roles, and the bulk of my time there was focused on capital markets. So today I want to do three things. I want to tell you a bit about Modomo and our purpose. I want to talk about some of our learnings, and then finally about the importance of being curious. So Modomo is a startup. We're incubated and backed by Roundhill Capital, and we are trying to solve the housing crisis. And we're doing that through meanwhile communities on underused sites across Europe and using modular construction in the way that we do it. So these are some of the key things as to how we operate. So one is cultivating and unlocking underutilized land. So that is trying to really ensure that land is used to its full potential, and that we're activating sites and kickstarting regeneration as early as you can within the process. Secondly, it's having a flexible approach. We've got a real variety in terms of designs, typologies, but also in terms of the types of partnerships that we can have with landowners, and the types of lease terms and the ways that we can enter into deals with landowners. We're delivering meanwhile homes. So meanwhile homes means an interim solution until that permanent development can get started. And then the homes themselves are transportable, so they can then move to a new site. And what we're also trying to do is really focus on trying to create a product that's genuinely affordable. So they're truly affordable homes for the communities that can access them. And we're using modular construction. And what that enables us to do is to rapidly deploy onto sites. And we built a really high standards of design. So they are modular and they are movable for an interim period whilst they're on that site, but they are built to permanent housing standards. And then finally, almost by definition of what we're doing with this meanwhile aspect, our homes do have circular economy principles just built into what we're doing, and we're trying to do things in a really sustainable way throughout the whole life cycle of Modomo. So I just thought it might be helpful to explain a typical deal to you, just to try and really bring to life what we're doing. So what we'll do is that we will work with a landowner, and we will lease a site from a landowner for a period of time. At the moment, that's standing at around about 15 years, but that can be flexible, less than that or a bit more than that as well. Often this can be on a major regeneration site. So that might be a regeneration site where there's long-term master planning going on. And what we can do is we can perhaps take a plot that wasn't scheduled for development until much later in the process, or somewhere that they want activated really quickly. And the type of landowners that we're working with is public sector, it's private sector, it can be joint ventures. So often it's just those sites where you've got this long-term master plan going on. And so what we're trying to do once we have a lease on that site is deliver rapidly onto the site. And so that's delivering housing, as I said, with a real focus on affordability. And there's also going to be other facilities that we're delivering as well. So that will be appropriate to the site itself, and it can be a variety of things. So it will be perhaps some sort of F&B offering, cafe, community event space, it might be a co-working space, might be some sort of retail, On one site, for example, we're also delivering some construction welfare accommodation on a part of the site, obviously very relevant when you're sitting alongside a major regeneration site where there will be construction going on. So we can look at trying to really make best use of that site. And what that also really links to is the fact that what we're trying to do is we're trying to shape and nurture community. So community really is central to what we're doing. And that's both the existing community in the area and the community of residents that will be coming to live in the Modomo residential units. And often you'll have an existing community who may have been there obviously for a period of time, but they may feel a bit neglected. They may have been alongside somewhere where regeneration has been promised. So actually being able to really activate and engage with that community really early on the site can be really valuable. And this is something that landowners that we're working with see as really valuable and a really valuable part of the process and of what we're able to deliver, and why it can be quite attractive to work with us and to activate that portion of the site to something that really provides a beneficial use overall. I also just want to touch on then the transition phase. So we will be on that site for the period of time. So let's say that 15-year period. Towards the end of that, we start to wind down and we then move to the transition phase. So that transition phase, we will work with the landowner and with other local stakeholders. So residents on the site may move into that wider regeneration site that's been developed. They may move to the local area, and we will support them in trying to do that in a sensitive way. It may be that they really love the idea of the Modomo community and the vibe and the buzz that provides, and they might not be so wedded to that immediate micro location, so they can move to another Modomo community where we've been unlocking land elsewhere in a city, even if it's not immediately next door to it. So we want to make sure that as we move on, we're doing it in a really socially responsible way. So moving on to some of our lessons learned. I want to talk about 4 things: unlocking land through meanwhile, embracing innovation, adaptability, and then community. So one of the things that we have really learned is just the power of unlocking land. And I think this is one of the things where I'm also conscious that Modomo is primarily focused on residential, but this really has learnings for the industry more widely in terms of other regeneration schemes. And I'm also very conscious that this is the British Council of Officers. And so it's looking at how you can apply this to other sectors as well. But what Meanwhile as a concept does is it enables you to unlock land for a period of time. And it's really just making sure you're using that land to its full potential and having those beneficial uses on the site so you can have a wider positive social impact. And that clearly does have relevance across sectors. And again, this is absolutely true with embracing innovation. So it's just the importance of embracing technology and innovation in everything that we're doing, and looking at how that can enable you to achieve your goals more efficiently, often more sustainably, and having greater impact. And we're trying to embed innovation technology into everything that we're doing throughout our product. Perhaps the most obvious manifestation of that right now is the modular technology. It means that we can construct more efficiently, it means we can reduce waste, we can design to higher standards and know that we're meeting those, and we can do it quickly. Next is the importance of adaptability. Almost by definition of what we're doing, we are trying to use sites in an adaptable way. But it's also about providing spaces that are adaptable and can be flexible. And I think that the importance of that is really underlined, particularly in the current time, never more apparent than when we really do see behavior of people changing and preferences changing in what they're doing. So having the ability to be adaptable and flexible with that space is really critical. And then finally, it's just the importance of community. And we've really seen that in all of the relationships that we've been building with landowners and with other stakeholders, that it's just putting the community at the heart of what you're doing and knowing who the community is that you are designing for and you're going to be engaging with, and making sure that you're really being led by that in what you're putting together. So finally, I just want to talk about being curious for us as an industry. We have had really great traction with a wide range of landowners of different types. And what we've seen there is it's landowners who are open-minded and they are curious about how you solve some of these challenges. And they're willing to try something new and think outside the box. And it is, I'd say, marrying that curiosity, but with this willingness to make it happen and to drive it forward and to really put that into action, to turn it into reality. So I just want to bring it back to those big challenges that I mentioned at the start. We're dealing with climate change, we're dealing with mass urbanization. And I feel really strongly that us as an industry and as individuals, we have a responsibility to respond to these challenges using our skills, experience, the diversity of the industry, being open to new ideas, technology, everything else we can throw at it, to try and address these in the best way that we possibly can. And that is what we are trying to do at Modomo.
Thank you so much, Lorna, and everyone, for those fascinating presentations. I can certainly see a lot of themes across new property startups around efficiency and sustainability. We've had a few questions come through, so I'll start at the beginning. And this one, I guess, is probably for Martin, Brittany, and Brian, who focused a lot on real estate being very slow to modernize. And this question is, what needs to happen to overcome the resistance to change and innovation if we are saying that the culture of construction is too fixed and does often lag? So we'll start with Martin and maybe get a point from each of you.
Yeah, sure. So in my opinion, first of all, it's going to take time. So people need to see tangible benefits for digitization, just because these tools cost money, and people, especially in the real estate, are not easily spending money just because their margins are usually, especially in construction, quite tight. But I think a movement is already happening. People are seeing benefits. But if I need to kind of choose one thing that digital tools need to do in order to get this wider adoption, is they need to be like super user focused and industry focused. So as Brittany mentioned, like people don't like complex systems, don't like to spend a lot of time that they're supposed to save by these digital tools. And I think this is already changing. We made a survey and people were consistently ranking their processes as very efficient if they had digitized in the past. So I think it's just a matter of just a matter of time for people to see how those benefits kind of impact their business. And on the other side, for the digital companies, is to make their products better and easier to use. Yeah.
Thanks, Martin. Brittany, what needs to change?
Yeah, I think Martin's points are very valid, particularly around technology companies really focusing on the user in this instance, because construction is not like other industries, and I think that is underappreciated when you have people pivoting from one industry into another and it like falls on its face. But I think from the industry side, one of the big things that needs to change is contracts and the way that we procure in this industry. We have a really, really messed up risk and like cost benefit allocation, and it's got a lot of people into a lot of problems. I mean, Crossrail is seriously struggling with it right now, and we've seen some ridiculous situations where we've been working with a contractor, I won't say who, and they have said, yes, this saves us 250 grand a year. Great, we'll give you the cash to do this. Oh wait, hang on, we're on a cost plus project. So even though it would save us loads of money, we want the client to pay for it, because the client is the one who ultimately sees the benefit, because they're the one doing that. But then the client's like, well, hang on a minute, I've already paid you to deliver this service, but you should be looking for more efficient ways to deliver it anyway, because that's why I pay you. And you end up in this ridiculous situation where no one wants to improve because they feel like they've already offloaded that onto someone else. So we end up in very funny conversations where we end up with the contractor saying, nope, the client should be paying for this, and the client saying, nope, the contractor's already been paid to do this, and ultimately ends up with no one adopting anything new unless you come in pre-tender. like Reba 3 stage before all of this stuff happens. And the issue with that is that by that stage, the innovation has moved on. And so actually getting innovations at that point is really tough, particularly very early stage innovations. So as an industry, we need a new approach to risk sharing, cost sharing, innovation sharing across our contracts and the way that we procure.
Yeah, I certainly think there's probably a BCO webinar to be had on procurement. It's a big topic there. Brian, what needs to change?
Yes, I totally agree with Brittany and Mark regarding the evolution needs to be changed regarding the industry. But we are in real estate, so it all comes down to the bottom line. So we need to prove to the entire real estate industry, so from investors to tenants, etc., that our innovation product and innovation services are beneficial for them because we are helping them by reducing some costs or by increasing their benefits, so their financial yields. So this is why I think we need to be, as founders, we need to be focused on what we can bring to the industry by focusing and showcasing what we are doing. So it is not about innovation, blah, 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 etc. for the innovation team, etc. We need to come down all together with one project, one value, and then it will be easier for them to understand what we can bring to the table.
Thank you, Brian. I'll pivot to you, Lorna, with a slightly different question, a variation that's come through. That's around a lot of property startups seem to be focused around information management. And as a startup that's looking at more the development side of things and developing and delivering a product, how has uptake with councils or whoever your key stakeholders been? Do you have projects in the pipeline? I think we've heard from some of the other startups about difficulty with Takeup with a lot of the client side. So I'd be interested from a development point of view.
Yeah, sure. So one of the interesting things is that we've had so many really great conversations, and so many people think this is such a great concept. It seems like a no-brainer. Why would you not do this? This is land that's effectively kind of lying there like dormant or dead within the development cycle. So this just seems like a really obvious thing to do. But I think that's where I was sort of trying to talk about this thing around, you've got to marry the curiosity with the actual willingness to take action and to actually drive it forward. So whilst and I think you then also get this, once you've got a critical mass of others doing it, then people think, okay, well, if everybody else is doing it, I will do it. And so again, it goes to, I think, what some of the others have been saying around that risk point of view, is that people don't necessarily want to be the first one to do it because there's perhaps more risk, or you're doing something that's different. Whereas actually, if other people have already done it, then it's all right. So I'd say, we've sort of had a bit of a mix, but we have definitely managed to identify, stakeholders who do really want to do things differently and do really want to change. And I think what we've actually found, and so I think this is why I'd actually also put it out as just a challenge to the audience today, is that it's really where we find there's an individual within an organization that really believes in what we're doing, and they see the vision and see how great it could be, and they drive it forward. So when you've got to do things that don't actually quite tick the box or are slightly different to how you'd usually do it, you've got to find a different way of going through things. It's been really valuable to us where we've got that individual who's like, okay, we've hit this, but I've found a way that we can try and get around it, or let's try doing X, Y, Z and pushing it forward. So I think that's actually probably something that people can take away, is that if you come across something that you think works really well, actually really try and own it and push it forward, because it can be really valuable. And also it's great for you because you've got something that actually you've pushed it forward, and it does make you look really good when you're actually able to deliver something that is new and innovative, and it will be something that it makes you more efficient, and all the sort of problems that we've been talking about today, it's helping you to solve them and so deliver things in a better way.
Thanks. We've got a follow-up here, which is quite specific. So I don't know if you'll have this to hand, but the question is, what is the all-in cost comparison between modular housing versus standard housing? So planning, materials, labor. And I guess that's for the industry at a broader level. It's about looking at sort of modern methods of construction and what kind of savings can be had there.
Yeah, sure. So I mean, I don't have the sort of direct answer to hand, but that's also because actually one of the things that we're doing, so there's a bit of a sort of twist to what we're doing, is because we're trying to create these homes that are also transportable and movable. So actually there are different elements that we need to consider to it being sort of straightforward sort of traditional construction and modern construction. So it's not necessarily a sort of a direct comparison, but I think, you know, suffice to say, there definitely can be significant cost savings, but what you also need to bear in mind is that it's something at scale. So in a sense, sort of the whole point of modular is actually you're able to deliver at scale. So if you're just delivering a few houses, then actually it's not going to be something that's worthwhile. But it's when you're really trying to deliver at scale, which is very much what we're trying to do. You know, we really want to be able to scale up you know, across Europe and you know, be delivering really significant amounts of homes. So I think that's probably what I'd say is just where you're delivering at scale, that's where it can become really relevant. And maybe I would just also add that, you know, there are other benefits that are you know, really significant around the quality of design and knowing that you're meeting certain standards, around reducing waste. And so having that efficiency, although you very much recognise what Brittany was saying, is you need to marry that. You can't just have it reduces waste and it's more sustainable. You also need to show the commercial benefits as well.
Yep. Just coming in on that, pure cost comparison is the wrong way to look at it from like a future perspective. So if you just do like for like, the cheap and dirty house, like we've all seen the impact of doing cheap and dirty. If anyone's tried to buy like a 1970s house and like the internal walls are literally cardboard, you can build a house very cheaply, but it's going to be a hellhole very quickly too. So really looking at like raw cost is never the right way to approach a problem like this. And I think something that the industry is starting to come around to, and we're starting to see from these life cycle assessments, circular economy initiatives, is how can we not just look at number and number, how can we look at, you know, the whole project and understand what the long-term costs are. And it's not just about, you know, the social costs, the environmental costs, which are sometimes really hard to quantify. There are actually hard numbers you can put against, you know, how long is this actually going to last? So it might be cheaper to build it today, but if it's going to fall down in 10 years, it's not really worth it. And I think one of the challenges that we have a lot, again, it comes down to the procurement process, is you'll have someone who is hired to buy a plot of land, build on it and sell it off. And their model isn't to build something that lasts and works for the community in the long term. It's to build something that will make loads of money. And that incentivization has resulted in a lot of very poor developments that are, you know, now having to be knocked down, and then we end up with loads of unsustainable stuff. So like the whole question has been asked in the wrong way for a very, very long time, and the industry is starting to come around to this idea that actually we've been asking the wrong question, and actually maybe there's a different way that we can look at this as an industry as a whole.
Well, and that comes back to procurement. I know in the Netherlands, for example, they've started testing different circular economy models where they're actually procuring building contracts for 20 years. And they say you get the pot of money, but you have to do all the maintenance for the next 20 years, and you choose where you're investing that, whether it's in the construction at the outset, whether it's in long-term maintenance.
So yeah, design, build, operate is a beautiful model, but it has its own complications as well.
Yep.
So yeah.
Okay, so I think we'll wrap things up with one final question for each of you that I think is a positive conclusion. I don't want to hold everyone up on such a sunny afternoon. So we'll go around the table and ask, who do each of your businesses or you as individuals recognize as innovation supporters, enablers, or catalyzers for creating, I guess, critical mass for change, or being leaders in the construction and property industry? And is there anyone within the BCO community? We'll start with you, Martin. Sorry, you get less time to think.
Yeah, that's a difficult question. To be honest, I can't think of a single person, but I know that there is a committee on BIM, and I think some of the leading members of this committee are actually from the UK, which are pushing for this unification of information, or how information is created in different systems in the building industry. So when people are creating these new digital tools, they can kind of plug one tool to another, so people can make use of the data. And I think that is the future. I think that is the that would be like the biggest change in the industry that would happen ever. Just because right now we are pretty much using like almost, I wouldn't say zero, but almost zero of the information that we are creating. So I can't remember the exact name. This was like a very difficult question. Sorry about that. But yeah, I think these people that are championing the kind of the common standard of built information would make a huge difference and would drive the industry forward, basically. Thank you.
Brittany.
I think some real champions for us have been Canary Wharf. So I reached out to Martin Gettings-Cold about 2.5 years ago, and he, like Lorna was saying, he just became one of those champions and was like, yeah, don't worry, I'll throw you in front of the right people. And he gave those people below him the mandate to move forward. And whenever there was a problem, they could just go back to him and he'd be like, yeah, don't worry, I'll figure it out. And everything just moved so fast with them, which was very funny. So even though when we first started with them, we didn't actually have a functioning tool, which they were aware of, but they were like, don't worry, we've got a big enough problem that we want you to solve it. And so they really committed to trying to solve that problem and gave us the chance to try and fix it, which we did. And now we've been on their sites for over 2 years. We're now on multiple sites of Canary Wharf, and the benefit, obviously they've yielded that benefit too, but for someone to stand up and say, yeah, you guys have never done this before, you don't even have a product, but let's go, let's see what happens, let's make a change. And they've really stuck with that. And I think finding, like Lorna said, finding that one person who just puts a flag and goes, cool, let's give it a go, is just so powerful. And you build a really, really beautiful relationship with those kinds of people. So I would say Canary Wharf and Martin Gettings and Andy Haig have been our proper champions.
Brian, who have your champions or patroners been?
Yes, I would say personally it will be Newell Patel. He's a former CEO of BlackRock, so he helps us on a daily basis and chooses us out of nowhere. And as an industry enabler, I would say Faisal Butt from Pi Labs. So this is an accelerator based in the UK that is really doing the work by promoting, endorsing the real estate founders like us, and believes in us on a daily basis. So I think Faisal Butt is only on stage and on the background is doing the work to help any kind of entrepreneurs within the real estate sector to promote their product and their innovation. So I would say myself, it would be Nero, and as an industry global perspective, it would be Faisal Butt from Pi Labs.
Yes, Pi Labs are doing amazing work. Lorna?
So I think I would say the UK Green Building Council, actually, because they've sort of really taken the mantle on trying to, I'd say, be like a convener, especially for sort of sustainability related innovations, and trying to sort of match together and bring together and build relationships between the bigger corporates and their bigger members and some of the innovators and the startups. And so really play that role. And I think, they're doing.
For sharing background on their startups. It's been really fascinating and I hope everyone's found it enlightening. Please look out on the BCO YouTube channel for the recording. You'll also see it on LinkedIn, and all our other webinars are located there too. Thank you to our audience for joining and for your questions and participation. And that concludes today's webinar.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Cheers, guys.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.